Coincidence is just the beginning. You play the final act, but fate closes the curtain. Konya, Turkey, 1981. The vast Anatolian sky stretches endlessly above you. You are 6 years old, the youngest of 5 siblings, growing up in a quiet village where the land is dry, the winters are harsh, and life moves in the rhythm of nature. One day your father takes you for a walk. He leads you past the village, past the fields, to the base of a great mountain. Step by step you climb, through the rocky paths, past the wild shrubs, until you reach a small plateau with a view that seems to touch eternity. The wind whispers against the rocks. The valley below is bathed in golden sunlight. You feel safe. Then, your father speaks. "I will leave you here." You blink. Surely this is a joke, a test, a game. "Will the monsters come?" you ask. He kneels, his voice steady. "There are no monsters. No animal will harm you. A human can only be hurt by another human." And with that, he walks away. At first, you wait. The sun dips lower, shadows stretch across the ground. The warmth fades, doubt creeps in. Then the rain begins. You pull the plastic sheet your father left you over your body. The raindrops drum a steady rhythm above you. The wind howls through the valley, yet you do not feel fear. Your father's words echo in your mind. No monsters, no fear, only the mountain. And so you sleep, alone in the wilderness, embraced by nature itself. Morning arrives with the scent of damp earth. You awaken to the golden sunrise, untouched by harm, and when your father returns, he says nothing. There is no praise, no explanation, just a silent understanding. From that day on, the mountains become your second home. By the time you are 10, your father leaves you there often, sometimes for days. You learn to track animals, to build shelter, to listen to the whispers of the earth. You watch wolves, study their movements, their patience. You understand that nature has a rhythm, and those who respect it will survive. By 15, you spend more time in the wild than in the village. You hunt, you sell the extra game in the village, you live by nature's rules, but the village elders whisper. The mountains will not give you a future, they say. You must learn a trade, be a man of the world. And so, you leave the mountains behind. You enter the world of men. At 18, you become a machine operator, learning to control steel and oil instead of earth and water. At 20, you serve in the military, a place that demands discipline but feels lifeless compared to the wilderness. At 22, you marry, as expected of you. At 24, you become a father, a normal life. But you feel like an animal in a cage. The mountains call to you, whispering in the wind. But responsibility keeps you bound. Years pass. Then one day something happens. A snake is drowning in an irrigation pool. The villagers call it dangerous. They say, leave it to die. But something in you refuses. You save it. As the snake slithers away, a realization strikes you. Every creature deserves to live. From that moment, you stop hunting. But in doing so, you cut your last connection to the mountains. Without the mountains, you wither, you gain weight, you feel exhausted, disconnected. At 35, you are diagnosed with diabetes. The doctor prescribes pills, diets, restrictions, but deep inside, you already know the cure. You look toward the mountains, and one day, without a word, you return. As soon as you step onto the soil, breathe in the wind your body remembers, the weight falls away, the sickness fades, your spirit awakens. You have found yourself again, and this time, you will never leave. The seasons change, but the mountains remain the same. You are no longer a boy. You are a man of the wild. After years of living in the village, surrounded by expectations that never fit you, you finally return to the only place that ever felt like home. And one day, as you wander through the highlands, you find it. An ancient juniper tree, its branches twisting like veins reaching toward the sky. Its bark is scarred, gnarled with time, yet standing tall. It is said to be over 2,000 years old, a silent witness to history. Empires have risen and fallen while this tree stood in quiet defiance. Something inside you stirs. You feel a connection, not as a visitor, but as a guardian. And so you make a vow. From that day forward, you watch over the tree. Whenever you leave, you return. Whenever you see threats, villagers cutting trees for firewood, strangers carving their names into its bark, you step in, protecting it like a sacred relic. People think you are strange. Some call you the tree's guardian, half in jest, half in admiration. But you don't care. The tree has survived for centuries, and as long as you breathe, you will make sure it survives for centuries more. Yet even as you find peace in the mountains, a shadow lingers over your past. The seasons change, but the mountains remain the same. You are no longer a boy. You are a man of the wild. After years of living in the village, surrounded by expectations that never fit you, you finally return to the only place that ever felt like home. And one day, as you wander through the highlands, you find it, an ancient juniper tree, its branches twisting like veins reaching toward the sky. Its bark is scarred, gnarled with time, yet standing tall. It is said to be over 2,000 years old, a silent witness to history. Empires have risen and fallen while this tree stood in quiet defiance. Something inside you stirs. You feel a connection, not as a visitor but as a guardian. And so you make a vow. From that day forward, you watch over the tree. Whenever you leave, you return. Whenever you see threats, villagers cutting trees for firewood, strangers carving their names into its bark, you step in, protecting it like a sacred relic. People think you are strange. Some call you the tree's guardian, half in jest, half in admiration, but you don't care. The tree has survived for centuries, and as long as you breathe, you will make sure it survives for centuries more. Yet even as you find peace in the mountains, a shadow lingers over your past. The wind carries whispers from the village, rumors, unanswered questions. You remember your father's words, "A human can only be hurt by another human." For years you believed those words were wisdom. Now you wonder, were they a warning? Then one day the truth finds you. Your father, the man who had shaped you through trials in the mountains, the man who had left you alone as a child, was not just teaching you, he was also battling demons of his own. Schizophrenia. You learn the truth too late. The village elders whisper about the signs they had seen for years, his sudden disappearances, his quiet conversations with people who weren't there, the way his moods changed like shifting winds. Had he left you in the mountains because he knew you needed to be strong, or had he done it because his mind told him to? You will never know, because before you can ask him, he is gone. He succumbs to his illness, his mind collapsing under the weight of a battle fought in silence. And as you stand before his grave, staring at the cold stone, you realize something. Even though he is gone, his lessons remain. Even though he was flawed, he made you who you are. But a question lingers in your mind, a question that will follow you for the rest of your life. Was he a wise man preparing his son for life, or just a sick man lost in his own mind? You turn away from the grave, the mountain wind brushing against your face. Some questions you realize have no answers. Years pass. You continue your life in the mountains, guarding your tree, walking the same paths your father once walked, listening to the same winds he once heard. But fate, as always, is not done with you. One morning, as you climb through a deep, rocky valley, something catches your eye. A strange shape protrudes from the earth, a curve too smooth, too perfect to be just a rock. You kneel, brushing away the dirt, and then your breath catches in your throat. Beneath the soil lies something massive, ancient, fossilized. You dig, carefully, methodically. With each handful of dirt, more is revealed. A structure, a shape, something that has been buried for longer than human history. Realizing the significance, you reach out to a local archaeologist. When he arrives, his eyes widen in disbelief. His voice trembles with excitement. This is over 98 million years old, a prehistoric creature long extinct. a skeleton preserved by time itself. It had been there before your village, before civilization, before even the mountains had taken their final shape. And yet, you were the one to find it. The mountain had revealed one of its secrets only to you. Would you have left a 6-year-old child alone in the mountain? Would you have trusted nature to raise a boy? Would you have built a life in the world of men or chosen the wilderness? Because sometimes, the things we fear the most are not in the wild but in the world we call civilization.